A U.S. defense official now says Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine is going much slower than the Kremlin expected. Did they underestimate Ukraine's resistance? With us now is retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. And Colonel Davis, you know, you've been listening to this along with us here. We know that U.S. defense officials, we have intelligence from the European community now telling us, look, Russia has not made the kind of gains they were hoping for and facing a lot more resistance than they anticipated. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, the first thing is I would caution, that we shouldn't get too optimistic about this so far, because when you take a look at some of the composite maps that a number of sources have put together, you see that Russia has taken significant portions of three different sections of Ukraine. So they may be going slower, but they are still, as Kirby just said there a second ago, they are still making definitive progress. They're making progress towards Kiev. They're making progress in the south and the northeast there. And then there's also some interesting reports that I found literally just less than an hour ago that confirms the second one I've seen, that the majority of Russia's forces that they had positioned around there have still not left. They're still there. So it's not like all their forces came flooding into the country. What that tells me is that the initial phase, the initial wave, is probably supposed to set the conditions. And once they have the conditions set and they make a breach, then they will pour these other units into there. So we could see some very large gains and some very fast movements later on.
And I think you make a very good point, Colonel. I mean, and I don't think anybody has said this is not a mismatch. As John Kirby at the Pentagon said, this clearly is a mismatch. But when you check off the list and you go down and you see that Ukrainian command and control is still intact, no population centers have so far been taken. Russia has not knocked out Ukrainian air and missile defenses. And so it gives, you wonder if the Russians are somewhat concerned about this, or if they had planned this, or because it certainly has surprised some of the intelligence officials in Britain and in the United States.
Well, we have this saying in the Army that no combat plan survives first contact. So, all kinds of things happen that are different than the plan. And then you have to flex off of that. And the expectation is that things are not going well, because this is the first time that most of these Russian troops have actually been in combat. And so, they've done all these exercises where everything can go according to a script. And now they're having to learn on the fly. And, people are dying, things are getting blown up, and they have to flex off of that. They have to replace people on the march, et cetera. But I do continue to say, though, that the overall composite of the forces of Ukraine and of Russia still is heavily weighted towards Russia. And even though this delays them, the end result, I don't see anything that's going to change the end result, what we've been talking about for 3 days now.
And I think Michael Kaufman, who's with the think tank CNA, is kind of on the same page as you. He says the following here, quoting, sir, I think they're assessing in the first 48 hours what they sense the Ukrainian resistance is, where they plan to reinforce units, and how the initial axis of the attack is doing to decide where to allocate their forces. Is that kind of how you see it, sir?
That's exactly how I see it, and I see they have a number of axes down there, and they're doing some probing actions, whatever. They're setting the stage, and then they've got these penetration forces, what they call them, just waiting. So as soon as they get the conditions set and break through, then you could see some real surrounding of some of the population centers. But I think their first phase is going to be to degrade the Kiev's ability, their army's ability to even fight as a functioning force.
And, Colonel, I got to go, but I want you to just give me, if you can, 10 seconds on this amphibious assault, the landing west of Mariupol. We're talking about maybe 1,000 naval infantry moving in. What's the hope there?
Yeah, that's actually kind of a small number. So it could just be, hey, we're just trying to make a beachhead there, so that we can drain away some of the Ukraine forces, so they have to go respond to it, so that they're not able to go elsewhere. So it could just be a feint.
Yeah. Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis, always great to have you on, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Trace.